Welcome to a special episode of The Story Behind. There will still be 2 regular episodes this week, but following the 2016 election results, I wanted to do a special episode on the story behind the Electoral College. Many are wondering, why do electoral votes matter, and what do they mean? Why, if Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, did she not win the presidency? And just what does the Electoral College really do? In this episode, we'll discuss how this institution came to be, the impact of its decisions, and why some people are still saying Hillary Clinton could win the presidency. I'm your host, Emily Prokop, and this is the story behind the Electoral College. I'm skipping the hashtag Potter and Family promo so we can get right to the meat of this special episode. If you're American and you cast your vote Tuesday, you may have thought you were voting for Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, Gary Johnson, or Jill Stein for president. But you weren't. You were actually voting on who your state's electors would vote for. Every state has a set number of electors, adding up to 538 electoral votes, which is why, if you were watching the news Tuesday night into Wednesday morning for some, you were seeing a scoreboard for Clinton and Trump with 270 as the goal number, since that would be the majority of those 538 votes. It's these electors who vote for the president at a later date. Does this mean those electoral votes were only an estimation of the actual outcome? Does that mean it could still change? For those looking for some sort of hope from this episode, I can only answer yes, but it's a long shot. The number 538 isn't an arbitrary number picked out of thin air. It has nothing to do with any sort of secret code or the fact that it just happens to be the name of a website known for polls and sports analysis, politics, and economics. Yeah, I never made that connection before doing this research either. This number is based on the total voting membership of the United States Congress: 100 senators, the 435 representatives, plus 3 electors for the District of Columbia. The number of electoral votes for each state is based on the most recent census results for the population of that state. When you see the campaigns of presidential candidates focusing on certain states, it's because when the electors from a certain state vote, the candidate gets all or nothing when it comes to electoral votes. California, for example, has 55 electoral votes. Texas with 38, and Florida with 29, which means a lot to the candidates who are campaigning. States like Connecticut, where I live, which has been historically considered a blue state since the 1992 election, only has 7 electoral votes. It's very rare and usually mid-campaign season that we even get a visit from the candidates. Other states you'll see presidents visiting while campaigning are what's known as swing states. A swing state is a state in which the population can be swayed in either political direction and doesn't necessarily have a history of being a blue or a red state. Which state is considered a swing state changes with every presidential election. In the next presidential election, for example, the swing states will most likely be the ones in which Barack Obama won in 2012, but that Donald Trump picked up in 2016, turning the state from blue to red. Let's change gears for a bit and talk about how the Electoral College came to exist. During the Constitutional Convention of 1787, a number of ideas were considered for electing the president, including selection by either the whole or part of Congress, by each state's governor or legislatures, and by popular vote. But the Committee of 11 on Postponed Matters came up with the idea for the Electoral College. They had the intention of reconciling different state and federal interests, but they also wanted to provide popular participation in the election. This isolated the election process from Congress, giving states with a smaller population more leverage, and protected the election process from political manipulation. And this was written into the U.S. Constitution in Article 2, Section 1. This has been tried and adjusted throughout the years to fit with what the government has deemed to be a fair and working model for how elections are determined. However, it has also come under fire and been questioned, even up through today. Once it was clear Clinton won the popular vote this year, my Facebook feed was filled with many who objected to the Electoral College, calling it antiquated and no longer necessary. And it seemed just as many disagreed, and I saw posts of why the Electoral College is essential to a fair election. Quick civics lesson in amending the Constitution. Abolishing the Electoral College would require 2/3 majority in the House and Senate, or it must be called for formally by 2/3 of state legislators. Following that, 3/4 of the states must ratify the amendment. In short, this is pretty difficult to do. Okay, so the question many people are asking, how did Hillary win the popular vote but not the Electoral College? Wouldn't the Electoral College, based on population, also follow? This is where the history comes in. Did you know the United States isn't actually a democracy? A democracy would mean that the nominee who receives the most votes would win, plain and simple. But in what we actually have in place with the Electoral College is called a republic. The Electoral College prevents large cities with the advantage of a large population from determining the preferred candidate of the larger, less dense rural areas of the rest of the state. In the 2000 election, in which George Bush beat Al Gore, Gore had the popular vote, but Bush had won the electoral votes from enough states by small margins of that state population, turning those states red, and the electors from those states voted Republican. Could the electors vote against their respective state's chosen candidate? Yes, they can. And in past elections, some have. But even in those historic instances, it didn't change the outcome of the election. They can vote against the party they are aligned with when they go to their respective state capitals to cast their formal ballots on December 19th. These electors have the right to vote against their determined party in secret, but not without consequences in some cases. In 21 states, there is no penalty for an elector changing his or her vote, but in 29 states, there are fines imposed. Those electors who want to change their votes are called faithless electors. In some states, a faithless elector can be replaced with another elector. However, no elector has ever been penalized or replaced in history. A Change.org petition has collected more than 500,000 signatures to appeal to electors in red states to change their votes. However, as of the writing and recording of this episode, at least 42 electors would need to vote against their parties to bring Clinton to the 270 she needs to beat Trump. Information for this episode was sourced from Snopes.com, Diffin.com, Heavy.com, HowStuffWorks.com, Time, The New York Times, The International Business Times, U.S. News, Vox, and TED-Ed. For these links and more, visit the show notes at thestorybehindpodcast.com. Follow on Twitter @StoryBehindPod or subscribe to your podcatcher of choice so you'll never miss an episode like this very special one that wasn't scheduled. Thanks for listening.